You know, for some people, their birthday is the biggest day of the year. But for others, it's just another day. And that choice, the choice not to celebrate, it can bring up a lot of questions from friends and family. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into the psychology behind it. So let me ask you something right off the bat. When you think about your birthday, does it feel like a genuine celebration, or does it feel a little more like an obligation? You know, a day where you feel like you have to be happy, you have to have fun? Society has this unwritten rulebook for birthdays, doesn't it? The expectation is all about parties, gifts, being in the spotlight. But for a lot of us, the reality feels more like pressure, anxiety, even like a forced performance. This idea of mandatory joy can turn what should be a great day into just, well, not a very relaxing one. Now, the typical assumption is that if you skip the party, you must be sad or maybe lonely. But what if we've got it all wrong? What if choosing to skip it is actually an active choice, a sign of something completely different? And that's where this idea comes in. It's called birthday neutrality. It's basically the practice of treating your birthday like any other regular day. And the key thing here is that it doesn't come from a place of negativity or trying to avoid people. It actually stems from a really strong sense of emotional independence. So for someone who practices birthday neutrality, the day becomes more of a personal checkpoint. It's about valuing that quiet, internal reflection way more than all the external stuff, the rituals, the attention, the whole shebang.
Now, this mindset isn't just some random quirk. It's often connected to a really fascinating and pretty rare set of psychological traits that all point to a very strong and stable sense of self.
So we're going to walk through the 6 core traits that really define this way of thinking. We'll start with low social dependency and go all the way to what it means to value authentic connection. First up is probably the most fundamental trait of them all, low social dependency. So what does this actually mean? Well, it means your happiness isn't really tied to how many happy birthday texts you get. You just don't need a single special day for people to prove they care, because you feel it throughout the year. For you, getting that external validation is nice. It's a bonus, but it's absolutely not a necessity for feeling good.
And that leads us perfectly into our second trait, which builds right on top of that first one. We're talking about intrinsic self-worth.
This is so closely connected. When you have high intrinsic self-worth, your sense of value comes from the inside. It doesn't really depend on what other people say or do. A birthday is just another date on the calendar. It doesn't boost your self-esteem, and it doesn't take away from it. You celebrate your wins and your progress on your own terms, whenever they happen. All right, trait number 3 is where we shift gears a little bit, from the social world to the inner world. It's a preference for reflection. For people with this trait, getting a year older is still a pretty meaningful, personal milestone. But its meaning comes from the chance to just think, to look back on the last year, take stock of where you're at, and think about the future. That quiet, internal process is just so much more valuable than being the center of attention at some big, loud party. Okay, trait number 4. This one is a biggie, and I bet a lot of you are going to relate to this one. A strong dislike for what you might call performative emotion. This is all about being authentic. If this is you, you probably feel super uncomfortable with that feeling of being on stage. That pressure to act happy, to look surprised when you open a gift, to perform gratitude. It just feels fake. You'd much rather have a real, genuine feeling than go through the motions of some emotional script. Next up, trait number 5, high self-reliance. And this is all about being the CEO of your own happiness. See, people who are highly self-reliant are genuinely comfortable just being by themselves. There's no void that needs to be filled by a crowd of people. And a huge part of this is that they don't wait for one specific day out of 365 to treat themselves or feel special. They're the ones in the driver's seat of their own happiness, day in and day out.
And that brings us to our final trait. And honestly, this one is so important because it clears up a huge misconception. Birthday neutrality is not about being antisocial. It's about valuing authentic connection.
This is all about quality over quantity. Someone who's birthday neutral might be an extrovert, they might be an introvert, it doesn't matter. What matters is they prioritize deep, meaningful interactions. A really good, heartfelt conversation with one close friend means so much more than a loud party with 30 acquaintances. It's about seeking genuine connection, not just a temporary spotlight. So, after looking at all 6 of these traits, what's the big takeaway here? What's the bottom line? It's this. It was never really about the birthday itself. It's about where you get your sense of validation. Does it come from the outside, from parties and gifts and social media posts? Or does it come from the inside, from your own self-worth, from quiet reflection, and from truly authentic connections with the people you care about?
And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. If any of this resonates with you, what other big social rituals out there, like New Year's Eve or Valentine's Day, do you approach with that same kind of emotional independence? Definitely something to think about.